So this is probably the worst episode I could possibly be torn between where my preference is. Because on the one hand, I do like how dark the sub goes with its depiction of the creation of the Millennium items, but on the other hand, I also like the fact that the dub kind of doesn't go that far. So I'm really torn on this. I'm really torn on this. They don't What's funny is you might think that Four Kids completely sugarcoated how the dark origins of the Millennium items. No, they actually do mention in the dub how they are sacrificing lives and Akhenaten spinning the whole these are evil people, we need to sacrifice them. It's just that they also mention that the soldiers are also sacrificed in the sub, which makes it even darker when you think about it. So I'm kind of torn, admittedly. I'm kind of torn. And I think what I'm going to do is I think this is going to be another neither. I think this is going to be another neither but unlike what last time where it was basically just screw this episode, um, this time it's because I actually think both origin points work because the point is still gotten across, right? We actually understand what is happening through young Bakura's eyes, and the horror that is on his face of what is happening, right? Right? Not it's not that the that going ahead and showing the shadows falling into the molten gold isn't effective, because it is. Holy crap. But at the same time, I don't think you necessarily need that to get across the same point, right? Because the atrocities of the village of Kalelna. I mean, Bakura literally says that in The Intruder. You'll forgive me if I don't respect the kingdom that destroyed my home, right? He, I mean, hell, we literally had it. We literally saw a village be torched last episode, so there's that. So Bakura, so the episode starts off, and the sub basically makes it crystal clear this isn't time travel. That this is not the past. Can I just say I kind of hate that? Like, straight up, kind of hate that. That I know that especially Japanese fiction kind of has this. Well, let's call it what it is. A bad habit of not really getting time travel right. You know, either the time travel is stupid, or it's asinine, or it breaks its own rules, or insert any number of reasonings here, right? Time travel is one of those things that I know is really, really tricky, but here's the thing: you don't need time travel to suck in this case, because A, you're traveling back thousands of years, 3,000 in the sub, 5,000 in the hub, which means you don't have to really worry about the frickin' in about tiny minute details as much. Yeah, I know, butterfly effect and all that, but I like the idea more that the changes were not as rampant because it's the ancient past, right? And because we're dealing with like mysticism and stuff. Well, you know, the whole of the mysticism of ancient Egypt is lost to history at this point. Right. I'm okay with ancient Egypt having magic powers. I've seen the Brendan Fraser mummy movies. I like those movies. Enough said, really. I mean, for God's sakes, Imhotep's powers are insane in those movies, if you actually see them. But anyways, he's but yeah, so Bakura is using future knowledge, and he's effectively apparently Akhenaten also aided him in the past, which would explain why Seto came after him. Why why Seto is the way he is in the flashbacks that we've seen. Which pretty much means we can't really take anything we see here as sacrosanct, because again, the events are being changed by everything. So, which I mean would still be true even if we did the whole time travel, because at that point we're altering time as opposed to just reliving it and falsifying it. Maybe Kazuki Takahashi saw that as too disrespectful. I don't know. I mean, you've already got a fictional section of Egypt as it is, so shrug, I guess. I don't know. So then Bakura starts escaping from the palace after he's planted his darkness in Akhenaten, and Atem gives chase. He summons out Osiris, Harris, and the gang basically follow after him. Meanwhile, Akhenaten has a massive flashback that takes up more than half the episode, which I'm actually cool with, believe it or not. The fact that most of the episode is actually taken up by Akhenaten's flashback is actually good, because that actually gives us a reason. This actually makes it so that the episode is about the creation of the Millennium items. And what's funny is that the name of the dub episode isn't even a lie either, which is funny because last week we had basically both titles be a fucking lie. This week we actually have both titles being actually accurate, because this is about the Millennium items' creation, which crafted the Village of Lost Souls. Which is funny because that's also going to tie into the dub name for the episode that will take for the 5-parter that's going to take place in in Kolna, namely Village of Vengeance. But I digress. So we also learned that Akhenaten is actually Atem's uncle, which, as our Seto Kaiba will joke about in the dub, yes, does mean Atem and Seto are distant cousins. Not modern day cousins, obviously, because of multiple degrees of separation. But whatever. Ever. I'm again. We'll talk about that when it comes up, because our Seto is going to continue the point I'm actually making about this not being time travel. Anyways, so they talk about the Millennium Spellbook and how they would need to decipher it in order to make use of its power. However, they say they can control the gods if you decipher it in the sub, which is I wonder if that's what was going on with Haishin, with the character of Haishin in the video games. Which, let's face it, might as well be their own continuity at this point. Actually, that would be an interesting idea, kind of crafting that would actually be fun to do as part of the rewrite. Have a filler arc that, instead of having some hypocritical jackass that we're supposed to take it seriously until he reveals that he's a hypocritical jackass, have a hypocritical jackass who's a hypocritical jackass right from the beginning, and we know he's a hypocritical jackass right from the beginning. inning. Don't have him pretend to be anything other than pathetic, you know? But I'm just spitballing at this point. So Egypt was effectively backed into a corner. Or was effectively backed into a corner. They had an invading army that they never talk about what army was invading at this time. I'm sure if I studied history, I could tell you, but I no, I don't think it's actually relevant to the story, so I'm not gonna bother looking it up. Right? Right. So so they come out, so Akhenaten has a plan, and he has a does a massive amount of hypnosis on a bunch of the elite soldiers, and they head off to Elna to basically kill people in a dark ritual which is full of dark alchemy, which utilizes dark alchemy. Yeah. The spinning is the same in both versions, and in both versions there's a lot of secrecy going on because, again, the less Akhenaten knows about all this, the better, kind of thing, which I actually agree with. For the record, have one damned soul instead of all the damned souls, you know. Oh. So then they get down. They forge the Millennium items by killing everybody. Eddie. And then the Millennium Stone shows up, and this is when we find out that by forging the Millennium items, the not only was the Millennium Stone on Earth, which apparently had a mold for the Millennium items, which is just, huh? That part's never explained, by the way. Okay, but it actually does show that they woke Zork up. Which, by the way, yeah, despite what Zork is going to claim in the dub, yeah, he is just an entity that woke up. The Yu-Gi-Oh universe is full of evil douchebags. Thanks, in case you couldn't tell. Doma, Zork, Darkness, I guess you could say the Earthbound Immortals, kind of. Dawn Thousand. There's a lot out there. Here. So they get out of there. They get out of there. All of Akhenaten's fellow disciples are dead by the time they get out of it. I mean, hell, they even have names in the sub. Two of them are actually named by Akhenaten in the sub, including the one that stays with him the longest but perishes in the desert, which is Swen. So that's cool. Very heavy cost, but he manages to get back. Heck, and just serve under Akhenaten in the palace as per his request. You know, they manage to drive out the invaders, and then Seto ends up rising through the ranks. Thanks. Which shocks the hell out of Akhenaten, but yeah, but it does fill him with a lot of joy. Oy. And of course, this leads to the ambition that Bakura is banking on, namely that Seto should have been Pharaoh as far as he's concerned, and which is ironic because at this point, Seto is actually Atem's most trusted ally at this point, right? Which kind of begs the question: was it mind control in the flashbacks that turned Seto against Atem in the what should have been the original timeline, you know? But I digress. But that's it. But that's basically it. There's nothing more I need to say about it. Diabound threatens innocent lives. Atem blocks it. Exit. They attempt their sneak attacks. That fails. Fails. There's not really much for me to say about the horseback battle between a Bakura and a Tem. There's like almost nothing to really talk about, right? Especially considering the battle actually continues into the next episode, and concludes in the next episode in a really fucking stupid way. But we'll get into that. But we'll get into it next time. I mean, hell, the name of the subs, the name of the episode of the next episode in the sub, freaking reveals it. So, shrug there. But yeah, I know some people probably expected me to talk a lot more about. Probably expected me to talk a lot more about this episode, because I haven't even been going for 20 minutes. But honestly, I think the birth of the Millennium items really speak for themselves, in my opinion, right? Because again, backed into a corner, you have an army breathing down your neck. Heck, it's a very dark. It's a very dark thing, right? I mean, I suppose I could sit here and talk about how, ask, what would you do, that kind of thing. And but I suppose, you know what? Actually, I do have a topic to talk about. Out. It's not about the forging of the Millennium items. It's not, sadly, but it is about kind of the idea that I would have preferred for the time travel. Because again, just make it type 2 time travel. Just have this be, maybe have this be an ally that looks shockingly like the pharaoh, right? You don't even have to play up, he's my cousin or whatever. Just play up of someone who's like, this is like you could even pretend like the gang are spirits, right? Guardian spirits. There he is, forged from my soul, kind of thing, and just kind of play up that angle, or go with go with the go with the whole the thing I suggested last time, where they blend in. They look like Egyptian people. Maybe even have Yugi kind of. Well, I guess that hair is kind of hard to parse, or better yet, have either Shadin. Actually, this is the way you would do this. Have Shimon find them. We get the whole grandpa what, blah, 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 and then have Shimon kind of play it up so that the court knows the truth, that there's do have the court believe they're spirits or whatever. And then as far as the regular people are concerned, this is just kind of Yugi is like the prince's brother or something, right? I mean, it's not unheard of. This very episode gave Akhenaten Cotton, Atem's dad, a brother, for God's sakes. I mean, granted, he's the king's brother, but you get my point. Right? I feel like that just would have worked better, right? Because again, it's like play into the time travel aspect, you know? Maybe even just kind of have, because you can do something with that, right? You can play up into it. We can actually do something with Kisara, right? We can do something with Kisara at that point. But no, no, this is the route that they have chosen. And this is the route they have chosen, and it's the one we unfortunately gotta live with. As I remove some dust bunnies from my computer, I'm gonna have to clean my computer. computer sometime today. But yeah, that is it. I don't. I'm not sure what else I can really say about this episode. There's not much for me to really talk about, really, because again, it's like it's all self-explanatory stuff. They sacked a village for the Millennium items, and Zork woke up. I know you probably are expecting me to just talk about Zork now, but I I feel like until Zork actually starts stomping around, there's not really much for me to talk about. Because again, what do I say, right? What do I say about Zork? I've already mentioned that he's not the only darkness entity running around. I have already joked about the idea of him creating the Shadow Realm, which I do have a theory about, which we'll talk about when he actually shows up. When he says that line, we'll talk about it, basically. Basically, I'll make a whole note of, I created the Shadow Realm thing. And then we'll talk about it. But, yeah. We are getting close to the end at this point. Right, admittedly, right? It so we've got two more standalone episodes, and then we've got the 5-part Village of Vengeance. Then we've got a standalone, and then we're going to be talking about Zork in the 4-parter, or where he shows up, and then we've got two more standalones, and then the final 4-parter. So there we go. Oh, so I suppose at this point, it's safe to say, uh, yeah, the how do I phrase this? I suppose at this point it's just a case of I just want to get going on it. I kind of want to just finish it off because it, in a weird way I'm kind of excited to keep going, but at the same time I'm just kind of like, eh, you know. But whatever. I think one of the big things for me when it comes to this arc is I kind of wish it was longer and more in depth, right? Because I think you could have literally played up a whole entire origin episode for Bandit King Bakura, but they didn't go that in depth. And Kisara is underutilized in this arc like completely, you know. But I digress. I suppose I should chop this off so that I can get working on the next episode. So that way I can, at bare minimum, start Vengeance tomorrow. Get Village of Vengeance done tomorrow. Since 2 hours in 2 hours per per version. So regardless, I'm going to chop this off because I'm just rambling at this point. Again, like I said, there's nothing more for me to say at this point. There's nothing for me to really say. The Millennium items were forged through death. They literally say this is not forged. They say in the dub, literally, this isn't forged by gold. It's forged by the darkness in human hearts, specifically Akhenaten's, because that was needed to craft these things. So all the same, I think that's gonna do it. I think that's gonna do it for me. So I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts, such as they are. And next time, Yami Bakura is gonna fucking cheat. Blue Wolf Alex the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one. See you in the next one. Stay tuned.